Hello. Hopefully people are slowly being admitted. We'll just give that a moment and hopefully Lucy can just let me know when I can start.
Yeah, we've got about 43 people attending at the moment, so I think let's make a start because we're about 2 minutes over time already.
Okay. So hello, we're delighted to be celebrating today our 35 years of the Arkwright Engineering Scholarship. It was founded in 1991 by a group of committed head teachers who recognised that design and technology was not given the profile it deserved as a breeding ground for the high calibre engineers that the UK needed. As I try and attempt to go through to my next page. Okay, the award has grown since then, encompassing all aspects of engineering, from traditional design and technology, mechanical, to the latest in chemical, computer and cyber security. We're proud to have awarded over 8,000 scholarships to date, becoming the UK's most prestigious scholarship of its type. We're benefiting from a powerful and influential alumni network, and with a backdrop in the UK of continuing demand for more engineers, finding the best still has its place. We really believe that nurturing tomorrow's STEM leaders and plugging a critical UK skills gap is essential in doing that. So for this year, we've got 300 talented young people coming to you to learn the tools, the skills, both engineering and practical skills to connect them with their long-term STEM ambitions and their future opportunities. Recognising the efforts of the Arkwright team for their dedication to public promotion of engineering, we're honoured to have been awarded the Royal Academy Engineer Rook Award. The announcement will be made shortly on socials later today, hopefully, but congratulations to our team. We're super proud and super pleased for this to have come through. The scholarship today is a combination of a number of key areas. Mentoring is still a strong aspect of the programme, with amazing people from industry who give up their time and give a lot of energy and enthusiasm to guide, support and connect our scholars to the engineering world. One of our longest standing mentors, Jim Ashworth, has been shortlisted for Volunteer of the Year at the National Charity Today Awards for his unwavering support of scholars and the wider programme. So congratulations to Jim. We are continue to increase our Connect days, both in person and virtually, always looking for new and interesting places to show engineering in practice to our scholars. We recognise that engineering is constantly evolving, and it's important to make sure that our scholars really understand the breadth of where they could go today. Our award ceremony has been transformed into a buzzing networking event where scholars are actively encouraged to meet peers and industry professionals. Although we see the real benefits of their mentors, we see building this alumni network is a really important part, that the peers in that room that they meet on that day may be the success that they can breed in 10 years' time. They are their future work and colleagues. Finally, the financial bursary to scholars and to state schools helps recognise their participants' achievements, supporting their progress, and for many, buying them their first 3D printer, which seems to be the most popular avenue to take. So where do our scholars go? On the screen is an array of different industries that we go to, and each of those consist of a number of organisations. We've done some sort of research around a lot of this, and we can't get over about the diversity that there is in terms of the potential and those opportunities. And we see that the opportunities that are given them through their Connect days can really lead them to where they explore to go, both in their degree, but also in terms of their future careers. So let's bring us into today. I'm really delighted to introduce our panel, but most importantly, Ira Shah, our host for today's event. She's an ex-scholar, a trustee of the Small Piece, and a chartered civil engineer at AECOM. So let me just hand over to Ira now.
Hi everyone, great to be here. Good morning. It's a real pleasure to be able to host the main session for this celebratory event. Are we good to start into the main event? I believe so. Helen's gone off camera, so I'm taking that as a yes. So today we are bringing together a fantastic group of alumni to reflect not only on the impact that the scholarship has had, but also their career growth, and the role that we can all play in using our positions within industry to unlock and support emerging engineering talent. Throughout the session that we've got today, we're going to hear, their lived experiences across the main panel, honest reflections and practical ideas. And in addition to that, we've got a wide range of themes and topics to cover to be able to have that discussion. So we will be discussing how the programme shapes confidence and career direction, how the role of industry and education is supporting our scholars, the importance of network support systems over the programme and beyond, and how we ensure the scholarship continues to be equitable, relevant and future focused. So of course, we've got all of that to cover, but we will allow time for questions at the end for any live questions that come through via the chat. And also the questions that we're asking today in the main panel have all been submitted by this very community of alumni. So it's fantastic to be able to also address that. Before we get properly into it, I will give our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves and have a round of introductions. So I'm just going to call out names as I can see it on the screen. So Anna, would you like to go first?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting to speak with you all today. My name's Anna Draper, and I was a scholar in 2020. And I think there might be a slight typo on the PowerPoint at the moment, but I study motorsport engineering at university, just going into my third year. And I completed my placement year at Mercedes-AMG High Performance Powertrains, working in Formula One as a mechanical engineer.
Fab. Samia?
Hiya, lovely to see you all today. My name is Samiha Dakri, and I am a 2021 scholar and currently completing a 4-year degree apprenticeship in digital technology solutions at EY, mainly working within the retail and energy industry.
Fantastic. And we should have Ian.
Hello, everyone. I now feel very old, given that I was a scholar back in 2012, of all things. That I am the head of grid for a renewables developer, and I studied electrical and mechanical engineering at university.
Fantastic. And Gianni.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. I was a 2023 scholar, and I'm currently a third-year biomedical engineering student at Imperial College London, really passionate about medtech and building a women's health startup currently.
Fantastic. And I'm Mira Shah. As Helen said, I've been part of this alumni for some time. Probably beat you, Ian, coming on 20 years with being part of the alumni. And as Helen said, I've joined as a trustee last year. The Arkwright really afforded me the connections that allowed me to kind of get university sponsorship, grad role, chartered as a civil engineer. So you owe a lot to the programme. And now I'm an associate at AECOM, working in programme management for global infrastructure programmes. And just a cheeky plug, I also have a podcast where I raise the profile of women who are trailblazers in engineering, called Try and Chat Engineering. So yeah, do check that out as well. And we'll kick off with the main questions of today's panel. To start off nice and easier, I'm going to go to you, Samiha, in terms of your experience as an Arkwright scholar. How has that made you stand out or be different from others, and actually help your confidence and shape your career? If you don't mind kicking us off.
Yeah, definitely. The Arkwright Engineering Scholarship was an incredible opportunity. I was the first in my school to do it. So that in itself was already helping me stand out. And then following on, I had done a lot of work experience and connect days with Rolls-Royce and BAE Systems. So, as like a 17-year-old going to these big companies, these industries, I almost got a feel for what, working could be like, what the different opportunities were out there. Spoke to a lot of people and their different careers as well, which is how I ended up doing a degree apprenticeship, because I mean, before that, I'd never really heard of, working and getting a degree fully funded all at the same time. So definitely through these work experience and connect days, I learned more about my career opportunities. So definitely that was a key. And then when applying, the applications were obviously very competitive, but having a 2-year engineering scholarship to kind of support and back myself up, when I'm going to interviews, going to assessment days, that had already built my confidence quite a bit. But also having worked with strangers before, having, gone to other events where you had to work in different teams and work with people, I just had that experience, and that built my confidence up a little bit more. So going in, it wasn't my first time, going to a corporate office or seeing people working in the industry. So that definitely helped me shape my career. And so far, I'm in my 4th year now, progressing really nicely through getting my degree and working with different industries. So overall, I think it's all down to the Arkwright and specifically the scholarship that helped me.
Absolutely. I think in these sort of situations, you definitely absorb more than you realize. So when it comes to those assessment situations or applications or even just conversations with other industry individuals, it all kind of starts to spill out, and you can make a really fantastic impression. And does anyone else want to share their experience?
Yeah, I think I'll jump in. I think for me, it recognised that enthusiasm that I had at a young age. Obviously, the application process is kind of in that final year 11 stage, and 15, 16, doing science fairs, doing the extra at school, probably always asking so many questions to my teachers. So it was nice to be able to be put forward by the school to actually apply and then go through that rigorous process. And it's the fact that, industry knows how it's such a rigorous process, and the fact that then you've been awarded one, to have that on your CV, it fortified that enthusiasm, but your hard work that's allowed you to get there. But then it also became a stepping stone into, trying to apply for work experience or using the Connect days and meeting people from industry via the scholarship. It allowed me to get those experiences, which then fortified my decision that this is a career definitely for me. But it also gave me those skills that you don't necessarily get in the classroom. So it extended my learning and those experiences at such a young age, between 16 to 18. So when applying them to uni, again, I could back myself saying, this is why I really want to do this. I've had the experience of the scholarship, and it's just drive me on even more to try and give back, and then also pave the way for future people to see that you can do it. And it's a really exciting opportunity if you get it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that sort of fortified what you're going to do, fortified your identity. I think it definitely resonates with a lot of scholars that I've spoken to. Any more thoughts on how the scholarship has actually shaped your career?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in here because I have quite a similar story, but this was probably my first exposure to the fact that school is supposed to lead you on to a career. Um, I almost didn't want to apply to the scholarship in the first place because I didn't realize there were different types of engineering. I just thought it was the school subjects we did. So this was a great place for me to learn about the different types of engineering, get exposure, understand what I might like to go into through the Connect days, what I didn't want to go into, which is probably more important. And then it built up my self-confidence, because the more I'd go to opportunities, the more I'd see myself as someone who could achieve great things and go to a good university, study a cool subject. So this was my first exposure to life outside of school.
Absolutely. And what a way to give you confidence to say, like, I can go out there and do something that I really enjoy. Whilst we reflect on sort of the things that we've experienced as scholars, what about the greatest lessons we've learned from the program? Does anyone want to share their thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. The greatest lesson I've learned, and I've taken this all the way through to my career now, but it's taking every opportunity given to you, because you just don't know what doors that they're going to open for you. You just don't know who you're going to meet or what you're going to get from every opportunity. And I think one huge example has been through the Arkwright Scholarship when working with Small Peace Trust. I then went on to take part in the McLaren 60 Scholars as well. So it was kind of one door opened after another, you know, and you meet lots of people. So definitely taking every opportunity, because every missed opportunity, you know, is endless opportunity or endless things that could have happened. So yeah, that's my biggest lesson learned.
Absolutely. Anyone else got any lessons they'd like to share?
Yeah, I think I'll add something very quickly, that I think it's also important to remember, and I think I had the unusual experience of breaking the scholarship back when I was doing it because I left the university after only 1 year. But it doesn't end when you go to university or when you go onto your apprenticeship. The the lessons learned continue to come, that the exposure and the ability to volunteer, and also through the mentoring and the supporting, um, with the STEM days, with various other things, and also more widely supporting the small piece community. Because I think one thing to recognize is we don't exist in a vacuum, that everything is interconnected. So we all have a part to play in a much larger cog. And this is where we have to, so while while it, while at the beginning, and I appreciate for a lot of people on this call, it's probably early on in their career potentially, and it may not make sense. But actually, what I've discovered is the further I've gone up, actually, the more broad and the more you have to be, and that more connections you need to have made. So take advantage of the opportunities both before and after the scheme, because they can really advance your career.
Yeah, definitely agree with that 100%. It is the connections that we make, and actually building those relationships that have been probably the most rewarding part of the program, in part so that you can lean on people and build your skill set. Anna, was there any lessons learned that you experienced over the program that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think, well, a couple of them have already been mentioned about, you do certainly get what you put in, and it is about that kind of wider network after you complete the scholarship, because I did instantly have that initial thought of, oh, I've finished it now, what's next? And, I've been fortunate to be able to volunteer at, when scholars have been receiving their awards, and, been able to do panels like this. And it's been something that I've longed to do because, so many made such an effort at the start of my career when I may not necessarily known everything. So to be able to kind of help and support and give that guidance back is really, really meaningful. But I say also for me is that it's the biggest lesson again is that it's not just technical knowledge. I think when you're at school, you're surrounded by heavy theoretical teaching, as well as kind of at university or other education and organisations. But actually, it's the biggest lesson I learned with the scholarship, especially through the mentoring, is it's that the relationship building. It's, if you invest in making those softer skills strong, it massively helps, when you go to interviews, when you're working in teams, assessment days, when, you haven't met everybody before, and it's starting to pull on all these different experiences, which shows who you are, because you're almost a bit of a mosaic of everything that you've kind of experienced. So actually bringing that all to life, and those lessons just keep coming every day, and that's what I find fascinating. But I always look back on my time as Arkwright and think this is where it really kicked off for me.
Yeah, I love that mosaic of all your experiences, and yeah, no, fantastic, really great insights here. We did get an unusual but fun question that got sent through by the community, so I'm gonna throw it out to the crowd. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say and why? Gianni, I'm gonna come to you first on that, whilst we have time.
Yeah, no, it's quite a funny one. I'd love to target this at younger people in schools and just encourage them to get involved with as much as possible. So it would say something to that effect and be placed somewhere near a school. And the reason I say that is for exactly all of the reasons behind the lessons learned that everyone said, because the more you get involved, the more you'll understand where you want to go, you'll meet more people, more doors will open. And sometimes as a young person, it's scared to know where to start. But really, it's just by doing one thing and then the next will come. So yeah, get involved as much as possible.
Absolutely. Samiha, did you have any thoughts on what your billboard would look like?
Yeah, definitely. I think I would actually have mine on the side of aeroplanes. And I think this because like we all know
Big
the
blip.
Jet 2 holiday one, and I mean it sticks in your head. And I would put that you miss every opportunity that you don't take. And I think targeting not just at young people, not just at adults, but actually for everyone in all careers across, all industries, whatever you want to get into, if you don't take that opportunity, or you will miss it if you don't take it, essentially. So I think that would be targeted to everyone. And I know I saw it somewhere, and I did actually sit and consider that it's true. Everything you don't apply for, everything you think, oh, I'll do it next year, I'll do it next year, it's an opportunity that you've missed out on. So yeah, and hopefully inspire some people here today as well.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, I guess we've been able to sort of show your personal and individual sort of impact that the scholarship has had, and that's been fantastic to share. But that individual growth doesn't come and happen from, in isolation. It really is shaped by the opportunities that, partnerships and industry people have provided and afforded. So I want to start exploring the role of the industry and education that plays in making that happen. So Ian, I'm going to come to you about what are the best practices of industry with engaging with education and people on this program.
Well, I think there's sort of two parts to it. Because I'd say that when the industry has to engage with schools, it's very important to remember that best practice does not mean engaging with education too narrowly. It's easy for engineering to focus only on science, maths, and technical subjects. And of course, those are critically important. But no industry, no individual, as I said before, exists in a vacuum. All engineers, we all exist, but that we also need people who communicate with communities so that we can get our work done, can work across cultures and understand policy and regulation, and actually do the management, and negotiate with suppliers and do environmental work. The issues in our world are so complicated. So it's about bringing the industry's knowledge to a wider range. That's why I think actually it's important to really widen out and to actually think where you're an industry, that you engage with everything that you cover. So that's why something like the European Day of Languages actually matters to engineering companies, because it may not look like a traditional engineering activity, but languages build communication, cultural understanding and confidence, and those skills are essential for an interconnected sector, especially given the huge international supply chains that engineers run. So for me, I think best practice is about helping young people to see the connections between what they're learning and the real world, regardless of their subjects. Industry should not be asking, how do we get more students into our field? It should also be asking, how do we help students understand the world they're going to be working in?
Absolutely. And I think it also links back to how we were earlier talking about the projects or the works that you get involved in have so many different stakeholders, so many different people, so many different disciplines that you're involved in. It really does touch all areas of just everyday life in terms of what we do. So it's important that you can showcase that in the way that we go out to schools, or how companies and sort of interact with the education space. So absolutely agree. Shouldn't be limited in what we think a typical engineer is or looks like or does. Gianni, I'm going to
And
come to you about. Oh, sorry, Ian.
I was just going to say that absolutely, the industry can't just has to champion the whole curriculum, because we're not just employing the mathematician, we're employing the person. So, and because the the world is not just about your narrow technical skill set. I know many people with excellent technical skills, but actually you also need the communication skills, you need everything else. And that's important to work on as well from an early stage, and to progress and to encourage in everybody, regardless of their background.
Definitely. And I think that leads really nicely on to the next question, which is what advice would we give teachers wanting to develop links in their schools, because that's part of that education, that curriculum. And Gianni, do you want to share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. And I will preface this by saying I'm certainly limited by my experiences. However, I would advise teachers to view the school as a community, just like any large body, and to engage new networks. You can approach it with like a two-step process where first you encourage the students in the school to have a strong sense of social responsibility, volunteer, give back to the people who have helped you. Because when they go into industry, the second step is keeping in touch with them. If they have this desire to give back, like myself and like everyone else on this panel, they'll be very willing to go back to a school and provide opportunities to the students. And it's very easy for a teacher to keep in touch with a student these days through LinkedIn. And there are certainly going to be specific individuals in every class who are going to go to great places, and they will be willing to provide opportunities to those that came before them, and volunteer. So I definitely encourage that two-step thing of social responsibility and keep in touch with the alumni network.
Absolutely, yeah. Giving back is so rewarding in itself, and again, it's one of those moments when you realize how much you can tap into in terms of your own experiences that you've built after the program to be able to bring back to other students that are looking to go into this area. And in terms of the actual program itself, do you think the industry has an awareness of the Small Peace Trust, Arkwright, in a way that benefits scholars through their career? Teachers do a lot to support their students in that process, but actually, does the industry, know what this is about?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, because I'd say yes, like there is a very strong connection and there's a strong opportunity there. But in the society that we have today, we've got the use of social media, LinkedIn. There's ways of Arkwright itself actually providing more of an outreach to more industry sectors, not just engineering, but also within engineering as well. Because as part of the scholarship, you get a sponsor, and that you might have a university institution, you might have a company, it could be a smaller company as well. So actually, if we bring more people into Arkwright to show what the students and the calibre of the students that have been awarded, it only then makes the scholarship better and provides a wider range of opportunities, because sometimes it could be constrained on, geographical preferences as well. Because naturally, if you had your sponsor, miles away from the country a few years ago, let's say, you might not have had as much interaction. But now, obviously, we've got the opportunity with online communications. It's a lot easier to do that. But then we are a lot more interconnected than we think. So the teachers do a massive job of providing support to the students that have been put forward, but it's also then making sure it's brought to the wider networks, wider schools. Does every school know about it? I was fortunate my school did, and they put me forward, and it's completely changed my life. But it kind of goes into that kind of fairness for all, and if we can keep using those networks that we have to spread the message and make sure it's an opportunity that everybody can make the fullest of, you're going to get better people coming through, but also you're going to open doors for people that may never have thought that they could actually have that opportunity. And then it's also, I suppose, actually not necessarily branching into sole engineering, but as Ian touched on, wider industries that we all have to work with every day as we go into industry. Because yes, they've been recognised as a potential as a future leader of engineering, but in their career, they might not necessarily be in engineering for a bit, or they might be kind of that connection or intersect between two industries as part of a wider organisation. So how can we develop those skills that allows them to transfer them, but also have wider industries recognise that the Arkwright Scholarship isn't just, oh, that's an engineering thing, I don't know about it, brush that off. No, it's massive, because they've been able to communicate, they've built relationships, they can problem solve, they can be a massive asset to your company. So having a wider kind of organisations and people know about the scholarship overall will mean that the right people can be in the roles that hopefully propel our society forward.
Absolutely, and you make a really good point that no there are typical routes within a career where you kind of just go up the rung and up that one line of a ladder, but actually we should be aiming to widen our breadth of skills, is just take every opportunity that comes if it works for you, and that might mean that you don't limit yourself to a specific box or type of engineering, and you can sort of weave around, and that flexibility and ability to do that is because of the confidence you have grown through the program, and then that you are able to sort of leverage those skills that you've kind of built up over time. So yeah, absolutely important that the industry understands the sort of the breadth of what the program has been able to provide. We've spoken a lot about relationships and how the external relationships within industry has been really really important and impactful. I think what's equally important and powerful, which we've alluded to, is the strength of this Arkwright network. So I want to sort of turn more to how we harness our connections within this community specifically to support our scholars. So Samia, I'm going to come to you about, how can the Arkwright alumni support the scheme, vice versa, and support scholars being, entrepreneur in their ambitions, and, not limited to just like they've entered one thing and that's the only thing they can do.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very important to utilize these connections, because everyone here has been through that journey, and especially at work, having mentors and things like that. That is how you progress and, I guess, learn. So I mean, recently I've seen that we have a forum. I think it'd be great if we could start utilizing it and start connecting with these in person and these online events. It's always good to get alumni there. I went to the last awards evening, I think, and it was great. I got to see so much just depth of information, and almost like all the students who had come had such a wide range of experience and their knowledge. It was quite incredible to see in that room. And I think it was a great opportunity to connect with people, to hear about, what industries they wanted to go into, myself giving some insight into degree apprenticeships and what that's been like going straight from school to work. So I think it's just having these opportunities and kind of forums and panels, things like that are in place, but utilizing it. So, putting some people with the same career interests, putting them together, or having some sort of area where we can grow our connections. I think it'd be great, because I'm sure there's people here who have got such incredible career journeys. And so it'd be great if we had a place to share that and, bounce ideas off each other.
Yeah, and I think it's there's so many different avenues that we can connect, whether it's through this forum, whether it's through LinkedIn, whether it's through, distribution lists that we see, or specific sectors that we see people are in. Sort of back to your point that you'd said, like, you don't want to miss these opportunities. Everything could lead to something. So, do make those connections, put yourself out there, and it's really important to network. Does anyone else want to add to, how we can be as supportive as possible with our scholars as an alumni?
Yeah, I'd love to add to this. I totally second what's been said, and keeping connections and having those avenues for people to connect. I'd love to represent the us that went through this program during COVID, and that actually really limited the amount of in-person contact we could get. And so I'd really push for more in-person events if possible. I know that requires a lot of resources and planning, and it's tough to do that, but any such things in London or major hubs like Manchester, whatever, would be particularly great. So yeah.
Yes, for sure. Anyone else?
I think that for me, I think Arkwright Alumni, the best support they can provide is obviously just becoming living proof of its impact, actually being visible and being seen. Because scholars don't need to be seeing, we always ask in the interview, who do you inspire? Who do you inspire to? And that's a wonderful question, but it's not necessarily what they need to be seeing. They don't need to be seeing the senior industry figures. They need to be seeing the person who's a couple of years ahead of them, the person who's just graduated, the person who's 5 years into their career, because that's the people they can see and they can relate with. I also think that the relationship does work both ways. And actually, I think the forums are an excellent idea, but I'm also aware of how hard the the staff work at Small Piece and at Arkwright. So I think we've got to be careful that the systems created can be self-sustaining with the alumni, because because the great benefits have to be realized. It can only be realized if everyone's working together, not with one central spoke holding everything together, because if that collapses, then we lose everything at once.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we have full autonomy to build those relationships ourselves. There might be initial forum or sort of access to this, great group of people, but make your own group, own groups of to help each other in whichever way and reach out. I agree. It shouldn't be all from one central point, or feel like you're limited. I think this is giving the opportunity to go out there and really build that network. How, in terms of just bringing it back to the scholars themselves, how can we best build an effective rapport with our new scholars, as alumni? Is it that we are really just encouraging them to take the opportunities they can and the network? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can jump in on this. I think it's kind of along with what we spoke about in terms of the alumni network and how it is a two-way thing. I think, as a scholar, if you think of it, they will become alumni in the future. So you want to make that investment in them so that, they have a good experience and they learn from what we've learned, and then they can pass that on to the next generation as well. So you get that kind of continual progression within the program. But I think massively for the scholar, it's when they first have that scholarship, they're suddenly, it opens doors to industry professionals, people that they may have never met before, and might be feeling quite daunted about it because, it's expected that they're not going to know everything. No one ever does. But at that point, it probably feels, and it can feel quite like a big, big thing. So actually being that person, whether it's through a mentorship or, the alumni network, being able to support them through messages or, using our wider network to showcase success stories, to actually becoming a safe place where they can bounce ideas off, because they'll all use their money to maybe get a 3D printer, or they might be, oh, I'm trying to design this, but the tolerances haven't worked, it doesn't fit, why, well, give them that safe space to ask those questions and make those kind of mistakes so that they can learn, because you never want someone to not feel like they can. And if we can use our network plus the wider network that they have around them at their schools or whatever they go into, then it fortifies their knowledge, but it also then gives us that kind of link between the two, whether you are their actual mentor or not. Because, my personal mentor wasn't actually in the direct industry that I was in, but I learned so much because they weren't. And that was a massive thing for me to learn that maybe what I wasn't necessarily interested in, but also other wider areas of engineering that I could go into or have the same skills that was needed. So there's many kind of positives for the scholar to actually engage with our alumni or the mentors. And actually it's massively creating that place where they can bounce ideas off and start creating those ideas of, visions that they've had into reality, because it can be a big thing to navigate, especially when you maybe don't have that network to kind of bounce off or start actually turning things into action. So this is where we could really step in and actually make that a possibility for them.
Definitely, and I like that point around, giving them the confidence or the assurance that they can, ask those questions, they can sort of build their own sort of identity within engineering. And actually, Anna, you touched on this earlier, and in the interest of time, I'm moving on to the next sort of topic around equity and access. And I think you mentioned this earlier about ensuring that we did have more equitable sort of reach of our scholarship award. How do you think we can sort of approach that topic?
I think there's a number of ways to do it. I know personally from my own experience of the Arkwright Scholarship, it might be different in different schools, but it was never known to us until we were actually nominated. So our school had actually gone through everybody and then put 2 people forward. but we didn't know that. So actually, I feel like that's a good thing because yes, it's probably like a every day's an interview if you kind of put it at that at school. You know, they know you best in a way because they see what you are in the classroom and they see that you're obviously maybe strong at the subject, you're taking an interest. But how do we not know if it had been maybe publicised at the school saying, look, we've got the opportunity to have this scholarship, you know, we're wanting to nominate people, you know, it gives practices in many other ways. They can start their CV writing or cover letter or interview skills, even way before that, if they might get further into the application process with Arkwright themselves. So that was my experience. It might be different for others, but it's that opening doors for everybody, because if people don't know about it, how do they know to apply? And it's that thing about taking every opportunity. Sometimes if the opportunity hasn't been told to you, then you'll never know. And I think we've all been there where you've missed something and gone, oh goodness, that would have been amazing. So actually providing that opportunity, and especially kind of utilizing, you know, the school networks, they'll probably have a website or they'll have posters up at school, you know, their own internal systems, but also then branching out to the schools in the borough or wider, saying, well, we're doing this, have you heard about this? We know that you've got some students that are definitely interested. We see them sometimes at, you know, science fairs and things like that. You know, are they aware? Because the more people that know about it, again, it helps those kind of things that we touched on earlier about, you know, parents will know, and they might be in industry themselves and go, oh, hang on a minute, we haven't known about this scholarship somehow. You know, let's find these people that have actually been there. What's it about? Can we support them? Can we hire people from it? You know, it starts opening a lot more doors. So I think that could be a very positive way of broadening the kind of outreach to students. And also just being people given that safe space to kind of explain their kind of circumstances. You know, I was fortunate that our school had a bit of a specialism in STEM subjects. They tended to put quite a bit of their funding towards it to make sure that we had very good kind of infrastructure, but that's not necessarily the case for every school. So it's how do we make sure that people, if they haven't necessarily been given certain opportunities in their day-to-day school, that they can actually still be involved, or at least still get an awareness of what might be needed or what they might be exposed to in future down the line, or actually in the application process themselves. So again, it's just making sure that, you know, no stones left unturned, because it can change people's lives. And sometimes it's also to people that never thought they should belong in it when they absolutely should. So it's making sure that we give them that kind of fortification that they do belong there. And the best way to know is to actually put yourself forward.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to highlight that you don't make assumptions before they've had the opportunity to decide themselves if it's something that they want to get involved in. Gianni.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to add on to what Anna said. It's not just the breadth of students who know about this, it's also about the time at which they're introduced to this. If you don't know about university courses, you won't know to pick the right A levels. The same way, the same thing applies for this. If you don't know about Arkwright before year 11, you're probably not going to have anything prepared which would get you in. So introduction at an early age, like year 9 or year 10, would give more people the opportunity to prepare and better themselves. And even if they don't get the Arkwright scholarship, they're already more prepared for other opportunities. So early exposure is just beneficial all round.
Absolutely. And as we talk about sort of access and the next generation, I want to move on to our topic around sort of the future innovations and staying relevant and forward looking. So Ian, I'm going to come to you about, you know, how is Arkwright positioned to help lead in adopting new technologies and ways of working?
Well, I think that it's very important to recognize that Arkwright is in the unique position of having a group of people who are naturally going to be problem solvers and naturally going to be that next generation. So it's not just about, you know, how do we adapt as a group towards how do we bring that in and adopt it. It's also recognizing that a lot of those innovations are probably coming out of the alumni community, and there is a huge amount of engagement with it. To bring it back full circle, I think it's about actually, by maintaining that alumni connection, it allows that deeper understanding. It allows access to that knowledge of what's going on. I also think it's very important to recognize that I come from a time when the applications were different, but we've changed the application process recently, and having interviewed, you know, every year since 17 on behalf of Arkwright, you can see how the different exams, have drastically affected both who's getting through and the interest that are getting through. So it's recognizing that actually, as we adapt new technologies, we're opening one door, but we're potentially shutting another. And so it's about not being too focused, because Arkwright has to remain broad and multispectral. Otherwise, we'll lose the breadth of what makes Arkwright great. But we are positioned very well with our alumni community, and also with the adaptation of where the future is going to go. And I really think that is where we can help lead, is actually keeping those connections, because it's likely coming out of our alumni, and the future development is our scholars.
Yes, and Samir, I'm going to come to you about, not just talking about technology, but also AI. We can't get away with, I don't know, any news article or any, conversation in the office without hearing the words into artificial intelligence. So how does one best adopt AI to enhance their learning and capability, whilst not encouraging over-reliance and complacency? There's a real balance there as people sort of start to adopt it.
Yeah, definitely. I think finding that balance is difficult. And I mean, there's so many training courses we have to do at work in order to kind of use AI tools properly. But I'd say within like work and personal life, I use AI a lot. And I think it's good to start to utilize it. But the way I've learned to not become overly dependent is by always going in with initial ideas of my own at first, and probing AI in a way that is specific to me. I always give it context. We've learned, how to actually don't just go in and ask an open-ended question, because you can end up in a very big spiral of endless information that is not relevant. So it's about kind of going in and probing and giving it context. And when you're talking or asking for iterative ideas and things like that, it's about refining your ideas. And I mean, I think it's great, 4 years ago, where we didn't have AI and we had to make all these ideas and creative things ourselves, would have taken us, 1 or 2 days. Now you can do that same amount of work and iterations in a shorter amount of time, with sometimes better outputs. So I do think it's hard, especially when we think, oh, like our brains are no longer as creative. But I think it's now switching that learning to actually, how can we give AI enough context, but also give it enough initial ideas to help ourselves, get more iterative ideas. So I think that is always good. But also in terms of like not being over reliant and complacent, data breaches, and especially all of us work. So it's not like we can all just give up company secrets all the time. So definitely being careful when you're putting in information. I always try to, I never put client names in. You don't ever put in personal information, because you'd be surprised how much information they know about you already. So yeah, definitely, just thinking before typing, but also there's so many different AI tools out there, and I think they are great. And once you start to learn, it can be quite effective in your day-to-day life.
Absolutely. Yeah, there is a real balance there, and ultimately it allows you to have the headspace to be creative and think different ways of approaching the work that you're doing, without having to deal with some of the mundane tasks in the background. So we should see it more as that, rather than a full reliance. Thank you guys so much for your contributions for this main panel. Really appreciate it. That does bring this like sort of main bit to a close. And as we said at the start, we have time for a couple of questions. So I'm just going to call out to Lucy or Roberto out in the ether, and just to, if they can raise any a couple of questions that maybe our panel can answer.
We have had quite a few questions coming through over there, so that's fantastic to see. So just to pick out a few. So Matthew asked, what was the most important part of the scholarship for you? Money, mentoring? What do you think was most sort of impactful for you?
Mine was during COVID, so I'd say the money was quite helpful because in terms of the Connect days, we didn't have much in person. There was still a lot of opportunity, but I think the money was quite helpful because I used it towards my A-level computer science coursework project, which helped me reach like the higher grades, especially because we weren't in school a lot, so we couldn't use school materials. So yeah, as much and the financial support for myself, but also for the school, which we used later on to kind of fund some more team projects and trips.
Perfect, thank you, Samir. Another one's come through from Victoria, which is quite a nice one. What engineering problem or technology excites you the most at the moment?
I think I'll take that one. I think that the biggest challenge that we've got at the moment is about the equitable distribution economically of power, because energy drives the world. Whether we want to accept it or not, energy does drive the world. And at the moment, that both the political forces and the technological forces haven't necessarily been aligned, which has left us with an interesting engineering challenge of how do we power the future? How do we provide those opportunities to those who are most in need, but also those who historically have the money to support it? And the UK is a prime example of this in the electricity industry, with the majority of generation being in Scotland, but the majority of demand being in London. And at the moment, we run gas plants to power London because we don't want to build the infrastructure. But how do we find a solution that actually allows London to continue to operate and grow without damaging our environment and our communities?
Thank you, Ian. Another one that's come through. Do any of you feel like you've used your scholarship to change the world yet? What do you think we should aim to do differently in the next 35 years to change the world for the better?
Yeah, I guess I can step in a little bit. I think following off of what some others have said about how this taught us to volunteer and give back to people who have helped us, I feel as though I've done that to a certain degree. Because of my age, I've not quite had the opportunities to create something wonderful that's impacted loads of lives, but I've started a charity program that I've delivered to a different country, which gives like STEM access and environmental engineering challenges to young people. So I think that's impacted the children in Barbados, which is where my dad's from. However, I have so many aspirations to do so much more. And I think everyone in here has changed the world, even just by being part of this panel. So thank you.
Absolutely. I love that, Gianni, that you've actually been able to harness the sort of the skill set that you've been sort of built through the program and all the connections that you've had to be able to feel that entrepreneurial spirit to go and just create something new and keep doing that. And I think giving back is a really big part of why we are part of an alumni and wanting to continue to do that. Lucy, in the interest of time, I think maybe we can collate the questions that have come through, and then we can, maybe that's spurs off another event, which would be fantastic.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. So again, I want to just say thank you to our panelists for your insights, tips, and call for action. I can see comments saying, you've been really inspiring and really fantastic to get your sort of personal perspectives on what we're doing in this area of the industry. What comes through really strongly is that Arkwright Scholarship isn't just a moment in time, it's a catalyst. I think Ian, you alluded to that as well earlier in the conversation. It shapes confidence, opens doors, connects individuals into a network that really spans industries and opportunities. So my call to action is to harness that. We have such a breadth in the network across industry roles, career stages. So really something truly unique that we should tap into. So yeah, be a mentor, collaborate together, create new pathways, help support the program, and we can really help support the next generation in more meaningful ways. So just closing the panel with that, and I'll pass over to Helen to actually close the main event.
To be fair, Ira, I think you've said everything that I was about to say. So firstly, thank you, Ira, Samia, Gianni, Ian, Anna. Anna, I've updated the slide. Very sorry about that. Really, really interesting stuff that you came up with, that you spoke about, really insightful. We do a lot of these kind of sharing now of people who've been on the programme, who have recently kind of, as Ian was saying, you know, people who are 2 years, 5 years into their careers. And that is a lot of what we share in our networking events, because actually we find it incredibly powerful for those who've just entered the programme. But we thought it was really interesting to share it with the broader audience, because you often don't see those kind of conversations or stories. So for us, really, wrong way. I hate this stuff. Basically, we just really want to thank all of you who are still on the call, who've been part of the programme. So obviously, you've heard today all of the benefits from the work that we do at the Arkwright programme, who've been on the programme, from the panellists themselves. As they said, you know, one door opens another door. It doesn't end with the scholarship. It's given them a massive opportunity. We'd really like to thank particularly, you know, our mentors who help guide and support all of our students. It's incredibly impactful part of the program. I think it was Anna who said that, you know, her mentor actually wasn't someone that she was aspiring to be, but still gave her a lot. There's a lot we can do with that. The sponsors who make the scholarship basically possible by their funding and financial backing of it, incredibly powerful. The alumni like yourselves who build the lasting effect of the programme, as everyone's commented on, you know, it's an important part of the overall programme. And obviously the advocates, so people who speak about this continuously, bringing that awareness together. So, you know, really getting an understanding, as many of them have said, about really that they could apply for that programme. So obviously, you know, the call to action, if I get this right, is how can you guys support? So obviously, there's the call out always about being a mentor within the engineering community. Any type of engineering, we're always looking for mentors. Hosting a Connect Day. Nicola, I've seen in the chat that Simi has said that they could host an event for us. We'll be definitely following that up. Thank you very much. Obviously, sponsoring the programme is incredibly important. If you do want to sponsor Samia's plane and the advertisement on the side of it, that is absolutely not a problem. We can quite easily look in for that. But advocating and speaking about the programme, really thinking about in what spaces and places could the Arkwright programme be interesting. You know, you might not be able to host a Connect Day, but is there someone in your network that might be able to support? So we're really interested in all of that. So anything like that, anything that you might be interested in, please do get in contact with us, and we'll be really happy to speak to you and see if I can get it right the last time. No. So if you use the QR code, it'll come to all of our business networks so that you can grow and continue this conversation. And hopefully we'll be creating the change makers for the next 35 years. And really thank you for joining us today. And here is all of our details for you to contact us. So if you think of anything else, if you any more questions, then do come back to us. Thank you very much for your time today. And on that, I think we will shut the event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.